I was at home cleaning my toilet. I do my own cleaning. When I got this call telling me that I was to receive the Ron Ridenhour Award for truth-telling, and I thought, this has got to be a joke. And I remember saying, look, I only did what I had to do. I am the great-granddaughter of a sugarcane plantation worker. My grandmother worked in a cafeteria at night in New York City so that my father could eat there during the day. So I am 2 generations removed from extreme poverty. So I thought, this isn't special. You do what you have to do when the time calls for it. And then I remembered I was a politician. And I thought, well, maybe this is somewhat strange. And then I remembered I was 5 feet tall. And I was a woman. And I was a woman of color. So you see, sooner or later, we all have a choice to make in life. We either tell the truth, and no matter what the consequences, or we stand down and are quiet. And with that silence, we profoundly participate in a complicity for the absolution of reprehensible acts. That was precisely what I had to do. I had a choice to tell the truth after 2 hurricanes, not one, 2 hurricanes, Irma and Maria, devastated the island nation of Puerto Rico. I raised my voice in an effort to bring attention to the humanitarian crisis brought upon by the neglect displayed by a man that does not get it. It isn't that he can't get it, it's that he does not get it. Playing along would have meant giving way to a false narrative. Thus, I told, for some, the inconvenient truth. We were dying, and they were killing us with the bureaucracy and their inefficiency. And so the simple act of truth-telling brought me to you today. While the American people opened their hearts and reminded us time and time again that we weren't alone, that our lives mattered, that we weren't going to be dismissed and forgotten, the President of the United States and the federal government failed the people of Puerto Rico. And people died because of that. Faced by their inescapable inefficiency, the Trump administration engaged in an attempt to cover up their failed efforts. Some went so far as to call the Puerto Rican situation a good news story in an attempt to change the narrative. There were actually some Pentagon papers written, emails sent to a reporter whose name, unfortunately, now I forget, stating that the mayor of Puerto Rico continues to be a damp on us trying to change the narrative, and stating that only the massacre in Las Vegas seemed to have changed the focus. I mean, the implication that lives could be traded from one place to another, that deaths could be looked at as a way of covering up the inefficiency of the very people that were supposed to be there to help. I didn't know about Mr. Ron Ridenhour either, but I did what every person in this room does a couple of times a day. I Googled. And I read his letter, and I couldn't believe the similarities from 1969 to 2018. In his letter, Mr. Ridenhour states, after hearing this account, I couldn't quite accept it. So after seeing the pain in people's eyes, after seeing the women that had to hold on to a rope to go from one side of the river to another just to get a nebulizer so that their children would not die of an asthma attack, seeing the hunger and the thirst of elderly people who were waving from outside their homes, just asking for somebody to help them. I had never seen poverty like that before. I'd seen it here, but I'd never felt it here. Because I had a grandmother that, small as she was, she had a huge heart. And she sheltered me from that, and she went to school, NYU and Columbia University, and made sure that education gave me a future. So if there's teachers in here, never give up the fight. Never. So my grandmother taught me, because I was small, I had to run a little faster, hit a little harder, speak a little louder. And louder I spoke. So after seeing all of that, I too couldn't quite accept it. So I did what I had to do on the hopes that somebody would hear us and somebody would help us, and the suffering and the violation of our human rights would end. And I have to thank the AFL-CIO and the 327, I know exactly the amount, of workers, machinists, electricians, plumbers, doctors, medics, Teamsters. And no, that was not the Che Guevara cap that I was wearing. It was an International Association of Machinists cap, which I will wear forever in the honor of men and women that left their homes just to tell us that our lives mattered. I have often been asked why I believe this happened. You see, it is difficult to understand that a country that can put a man in the moon 238,900 miles away cannot fathom the logistics to take help to men, women, and children 1,000 miles from its coast because, as it was said, the logistical challenges were unsurmountable. Well, maybe for a Mar-a-Lago golf course, they were unsurmountable. So the neglect and the deaths that followed will forever be etched in all of our memories. For you can kill with a weapon, as was done in my life, or you can kill with neglect. For inaction produced by neglect and injustice can also be considered an act of aggression. Perhaps it was too easy for President Trump and his administration to disregard our lives because we are a territory, a colony of the United States. But we know better. The American people have not forsaken us, and they have done what some in the federal government have been unable to do. And they have helped us understand that we no longer have to consent to be treated like less. Maria has unmasked many truths. One is that Puerto Rico's status, its colonial status, must change into a dignified relationship, one that sets us in a path of mutual dignity and respect. Now, don't let the lights in San Juan fool you. Just today, again, the entire island of Puerto Rico is without power. Last week, and it's going to take about 3 days to get the power back on. Last week, again, 2 days, the entire island without power. And so it has come to pass that every so many weeks, and it always seems to be the same line, the line that was supposedly replaced by Whitefish Corporation. Something fishy there, right? So I humbly accept this recognition on behalf of the thousands of Puerto Ricans that still have no electricity 7 months after Irma and Maria. On behalf of the parents, teachers, and children who today are taking to the streets to defend their communities by protesting against the closing of their schools as their local government shows disregard for public education. More than 300 schools are going to be closed and communities are going to be ripped apart. I accept it on behalf of university students who are fighting to keep campuses open and their tuition affordable, as the Fiscal Control Board tells us that we have to close half of the university campuses in Puerto Rico. On behalf of the elderly who will soon see their pensions reduced as part of a long list of austerity measures imposed on us by a Fiscal Control Board that without a doubt is evidence of Puerto Rico's political subordination, and which existence must come to an end. But also, I accept this award on behalf of the close to 500,000 Puerto Ricans that have had to leave Puerto Rico to survive. Families have been ripped apart because conditions at home are not what they should be. And it makes you mad. And I'm more comfortable in tactical boots and jeans and a t-shirt. But I got all dressed up today just to ask you to help us and continue repeating the voices of help, because people are still dying. People cannot plug themselves to the respirators because the amount of diesel that it takes and the money that it takes to get them running just is not enough. We don't have enough. It's not like what the president said, we want things to be done for ourselves. We want to be able to do things for ourselves. And we are so grateful for so many in this room that have hugged me and said, I went down to Puerto Rico this day and that day. And so grateful for the teachers and the unions and the AFL-CIO workers. But we still need your help. We must continue to be relentless and unapologetic about telling the truth and asserting our right to be treated, all of our rights, to be treated with dignity. But most of all, I must continue to tell the truth, no matter what they say, no matter who says it, no matter the color of the house where they live in. Because you see, the truth is we don't even know as of today how many people have died. And we have to honor the lives of the roughly more than 1,000 Puerto Ricans who died as a result of a botched effort at the hands of an administration who was mostly concerned about the narrative and the political implications. I ask you to help me further the message. The political subordination and financial domination which allow this injustice and neglect to occur must come to an end. I humbly ask you to help us further our endeavor. I am committed to continue to tell the truth in order to save lives, because after all, my grandmother taught me that you never start a fight, but you never, never, never leave one unfinished. Thank you very much.